You are live with us here in the Newsroom studio. A very good morning to you. We'll be with you until midday today. Morning to you, Elvis.
Welcome back, Yemen. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, nice to be back on my feet. Spent a couple of days off my feet and wasn't the best experience. But yeah, I'm back on the horse and I'll try and make it count today because it's a red letter day today for South Africa. Very important day.
Very important day. This is Budget Speech 2017. Everybody is waiting for it, Yemen. Now, as you know, today the focus falls on the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, as he prepares to deliver his tightest budget speech yet. The one thing, though, that you can be sure of is that you, yes, you will be forking out more towards personal income tax.
And syntax. Withdrawal, cigarettes, you'll be paying more as we do every year. But some of my friends there, a bottle of whiskey at 1,000 Rand is still a bargain, Elvis. That's what some people are saying. So what can you do? We're always going to have a drink on you. So this is the question. What are your hopes today? What do you want the minister to say, talk to you today? Minister Gordhan is under the pump today, isn't he?
Let's take a look at what you have to say at home. Siafana says, I hope that he will increase the grandmother's money and put more money into education.
Yeah, Kolani comes and he says, I'm expecting the minister to increase the tax on both tobacco and withdrawal. That's, of course, alcohol, even though that will not decrease alcohol consumption. Nothing will decrease alcohol consumption.
Now, Temba says, I hope that he will increase the grant money and increase alcohol and cigarettes. Well, syntaxes you will pay for, my friend, definitely.
Yep. You will pay, no doubt. Of course, the one discussion that has been around for the last couple of weeks has been around value-added tax, VAT. We've been told for the last couple of weeks that, we're below the average on the African continent. So, Elvis, we're asking a straight-up question on this.
Would you be happy with a VAT increase today? Now, it's probably, some say and suggest, analysts, that it's the best way to increase it because it's the most easiest, but how will it affect you and me, especially the poor? 87% of you currently are saying, no, please don't increase VAT today.
Let's see why people are saying that. Siafana comes back, he says, no, I'm not happy at all because our salary are not increasing, but they still wanted to increase the VAT. That's the point. Salary is a slow grower.
Now Lachasa says, it's a big no with bold letters you can see there. VAT shouldn't be increased today. The reason being, I'm still earning the same salary. Increase dollar.
Nix. Nothing must be increased, is what he's saying. This one from Temba comes in. Oh, we missed Temba. Sorry, Temba. Yes. No, I'm not happy. Even my salary is not increasing since 2015. That's 2 years now, Temba. You need to talk to your boss. Anyhow, today we'll bring you a variety of coverage around budget speech. The build-up will be in Parliament, as you can expect, of course. One of the most important days in the calendar for a nation, emerging nation like South Africa.
We'll bring you all those analyses during the course of this program. We'll speak to a number of analysts here in studio as well as in Cape Town to find out a little bit more. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan will today deliver his budget speech as the country's economic growth remains slow. Emergency services across the country remain on high alert as heavy rain persists. And the Human Rights Commission has appealed to communities across the country to refrain from taking the law into their own hands following attacks on foreign nationals. Now, those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. Kendall?
Well, I don't know how late you went to get to bed or how early you got up because it was end-to-end stuff all night, either from football through to cricket. It's been a very interesting weekday.
It's a big FIFA meeting happening here in South Africa today. Could it be the end of the line for the CAF strongman Isayatu? Are we seeing the beginning of the end there?
The man's been charged for 29 years from João Havelange all the way through to Gianni Infantino. One doesn't know what's going to happen, but something we're going to be chatting about a little later.
Yeah.
The Sports Focus.
Yeah, absolutely, we have to. I think it's a much more important development than what many people are aware of what's happening behind the scenes in the, let's call it the power brokers in the world of football.
Now, 100%, and that's exactly why you're going to be watching Newsroom the entire day. So make sure you stay abreast of all that's happening both on and off the field. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And it hit that one down the ground as well for 4. But it doesn't matter. Back-to-back boundaries, and Kane Williamson affords himself a smile because his side have levelled the series.
New Zealand ends South Africa's purple patch in ODIs, beating the Proteas by 6 runs to level the 5-match ODI series 1-1 in Christchurch.
Here's Percy Dow, now Billiards! Sundowns grab the lead!
Mamelodi Sundowns have cranked up the bulldozer, moving up the upper log with a 2-1 victory over Platinum Stars as they turn their focus from CAF to the league.
Lovely touch to Silva. Sane straight offside. Aguero with the run in behind. Aguero! Sane!
It was raining goals in Manchester as the brilliant City outgunned Monaco 5-3 in a last 16 first leg thriller of a tie.
Absolutely amazing!
Now all this and more I'll have for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, but do stay with us because Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. At least 6 people have died during heavy rains across the country in the past few days. The bodies of 3 people who went missing in the Northern Cape when the Orange River burst its banks have been found. Police are still looking for a 4th person. Now, it has been raining heavily in Limpopo, Gauteng and the northwest. Motorists have been warned to be extra vigilant on the wet roads and not risk driving across flooded bridges. Communities living in low-lying areas remain on high alert. The South African Weather Service has warned of flash floods as wet weather conditions are expected to persist throughout the week. The Human Rights Commission has appealed to communities across the country to refrain from taking the law into their own hands. It's condemned violence in recent weeks directed at foreign nationals and the destruction of property. In the latest incident, more than 20 foreign-owned shops were looted in Attridgeville and surrounding areas in Pretoria this week. Locals went on the rampage, targeting Spaza shops. Now they accuse foreign nationals of drug peddling and stealing their jobs. 3 people were arrested and charged for business robbery. They are expected to appear in court today. The latest wave of violence comes ahead of a planned community march on Friday. A large police presence remains in the area. SABC's acting CEO, James Aguma, has confirmed that he is the author of an unsigned response to the ad hoc committee. In the response, Aguma is severely critical of the probe into the public broadcaster. Ad hoc committee chairperson Vincent Smith has stressed that the report is based on evidence presented in court and the public protector's report. The broadcaster claims the approach of the inquiry was accusational rather than inquisitorial. The draft report reads that there's prima facie evidence that the SABC's primary mandate was compromised. It also cited the SABC's disregard for decisions of the courts, ICASA, as well as the public protector. Some responses allege that the former COO, Claudia Motsoeneng, is still pulling strings from behind the scenes. This matter will be forwarded to the Communications Committee. Motsoeneng, through his lawyer, has complained about being prejudiced. Former acting GCEO, Phil Molefe, claims that the former board chair, Dr. Ben Ngubane, misled the committee. Ngubane alleged that the New Age contract with the SABC was signed under Molefe's leadership. Molefe, on the other hand, said that he was against this deal because it would cost the SABC millions. The committee is expected to ventilate all these issues before drafting any recommendations. The Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, will deliver his budget speech in Parliament today. With economic growth not picking up, Gordhan may be forced to hike personal income tax for the 2nd year in a row. Some economists say that he could also increase value-added tax and corporate taxes.
The Finance Minister has a job of funding a shortfall of 28 billion rand in revenue, and the question is, where will this come from? The Parliamentary Budget Office, or PBO, says an increase of 8% in VAT would generate at least 20 billion rand. It says the Davis Tax Commission has predicted a VAT increase in the medium term.
I think he's being practical there because the numbers that we require are significant. It's, for example, if we talk about wealth taxes, some of the recommendations in the Davis Tax Committee's reports around wealth taxes will probably raise at most 5 billion. It's not going to get you there. So, you know, one needs to start considering how we get to those certain levels. Obviously, it's a major concern that VAT is regressive.
The PBO says it is perhaps a temporary rescue.
We do have short-term considerations, and so we may have to increase VAT, as my colleague Brandon said, in the next 3 to 5 years, or within the next medium-term expenditure framework, and that is sort of balancing the books in the short term.
The PBO is also questioning whether the fiscal framework is still appropriate and says providing a safety net for the poor and containing expenditure has been a tough balancing act.
Since '94, we've been on the same policy trajectory. We've called it, I think, counter-cyclical. We've called it stabilization. Yet we haven't seen growth. We haven't seen employment creation. We haven't seen poverty reduction. So that should be the first warning sign.
The PBO says corporate tax must not be too high to chase away investors, but that these taxes must be balanced with the incentives these investors receive from the government. Bulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, that's why we're posing you that question today. Remember, it's budget day, it's crunch day today. Question on your screen is, what do you expect from the minister, the finance minister, that is Pravin Gordhan today? What is your expectations? As you know, we're also running that poll. We want to find out from you if you do expect that VAT increase today. Here's a couple of, there's the poll on the screen right now. Would you be happy with a VAT increase so far? 87% from the 160 votes that we got are saying no, we don't need an increase. 13% are saying yes, we are happy with a VAT increase today. So there we go. There's a couple of comments also coming through, but we'll read that afterwards. Let's go over to Yemen to start this conversation on what the minister might say today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. Very good morning to you, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. He's faced with the task of collecting 28 billion rand extra in taxes in a low-growth environment. The minister will deliver his budget speech later today, which is expected to focus on tax.
In his budget speech, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan will announce how Treasury will cap government spending, narrow the budget deficit and reduce government debt. Some analysts say an increase on the fuel levy and sin taxes on alcohol and tobacco can be guaranteed. The sugar tax is also to be implemented this year. Revenue from sugar tax could add 5 to 10 billion rand into the state coffers. And once again, consumers could escape the value-added tax, VAT, as it is viewed as a tax on the poor.
I do not think he is going to increase VAT. But we believe that there is scope for him to increase the rate of VAT without affecting the poor. You know, as we mentioned elsewhere, that he can target VAT, increasing VAT on luxury goods. They can define what luxury goods. For instance, they can say motor vehicles above 1 million, you know, TVs above a certain amount. Obviously, those are luxury goods.
Economists are warning against a corporate tax hike. They say this move may make the country unattractive to investors for foreign direct investment.
Where the world is going globally at the current moment, there is nationalistic sentiments across the board with countries looking inward. You don't want to make yourself unattractive as a country for foreign direct investment and for mobile capital.
Makola is concerned that after announcing a personal income tax hike in his budget speech last year, a further tax hike would hamper consumer spending and squeeze the taxpayer. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough ask. The minister has to raise extra revenue, and to do this, he has to increase taxes. Many South Africans have already drawn up their wish list of what they think the minister should do to help them cope within this tough current economic environment, which is characterized by high levels of poverty and employment rate. To talk a little Yeah, that was a very quick little break. We have to apologize for all the technical difficulties that we're having today. Now, we're asking you the question, what are you hoping to hear from the Finance Minister during the budget speech a little bit later today? Let's have a look. Let's have a look at what you guys are telling us. Telele Collins, he says he should for once allocate the money to early childhood development, which has been overlooked since the dawn of democracy. Lechasa says, I'm expecting Finance Minister to increase the price of tobacco, alcohol and SASA grants. The smoking of tobacco is killing us, he says. Fighter says, it's pointless to increase cigarettes and alcohol because the people that suffer the most is the poor people. They must be subsidized, says. Tembas Kosana says they're hoping to hear how to remove red tape on SMMEs in order for black-owned business to reach their potential. Yeah, we're also running a poll today on the much talked about VAT increase. Would you be happy with a VAT increase? Is what we are asking you guys today. We've got 169 votes in right now, of which 88% of you, an overwhelming majority, says no, we will not be happy if VAT is increased today. Well, how do we raise money? Sihle Magagula says, in terms of VAT issues, they should start to increase salaries, otherwise VAT must fall. Kananasu says, no, increasing VAT will frustrate the poor and prices of food will drastically increase. Stefana says, no, I'm not happy at all because our salaries are not increasing, but they still want to increase the VAT. Well, these are your tweets. It's Budget 2017. On this very channel later in the day, let's go over to Elvis now for more.
Let's change a little bit of gear here. The United Democratic Movement is calling for the National Consultative Conference, which will evaluate the agreements between the ruling party and the apartheid government pre and during the CODESA negotiations. UDM leader General Bantu Lomisa said that the meaningful transformation, including the transfer of land and control of the economy, will never be realized as long as those agreements, including the sunset clause, are used as scare tactics that lock out the majority of our citizens outside the economic mainstream. He said that they believe that no individual party's policy conference could prefer all the sustainable solutions to the challenges that we face as a nation. Now, for more on this story in our parliamentary studios, we are very glad to have the UDM leader, General Bantu Lomisa. General, a very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning.
Let's just look into what you are saying. You're calling for the reevaluation of the agreements between the ruling party as well as the apartheid government pre and during CODESA. Why do you think that should be the starting point?
There is no doubt in anybody's mind that as a country we need to review the last 22 years and check whether we have developed in terms of our intended agreements then. If we identify that there are some inherent defects, as a nation we have a right to address those inherent defects. The best way to do that is not going to be only a one political party doing so, because in the last 22 years we have been witnessing one-party dominance, and they have not achieved what we wanted to see. Instead, we are seeing a lot of corruption, and when we ask, when will the land be distributed? When will the black South Africans be the owners and control of the economy? Then they point fingers that no, there were agreements that we can't touch the land, they can't touch the property, the constitutional clause, what. We need, therefore, to the whole system, including the which I always like to call them glorified homelands. It's a reflection of the work which national departments are doing. We should remove provinces, consider removing them, instead strengthen the local government and try and have a uniformity in this country, and also make sure that the infrastructure which we inherited in 1990 there were no winners in the conflict. Then the ANC and National Party opted to settle their dispute through negotiations. But it looks like the majority citizens of the country have been locked outside the economic mainstream. It is in those areas where we need to focus, especially the land and property, because that sunset clause was escalated to a level of being accommodated in the Constitution. Anybody today would just go and grab land without the constitutional amendment, without permission. The owner of that land or property has a right to seek a legal remedy. And that the Constitutional Court, I'm sure, would say, this is in line with the Constitution, you can't take that land. So we need, therefore, to call all the relevant players and talk to them and say, guys, we have tried everything on this issue of land. Why don't we try A, B, C, D, E? But you will need a consensus amongst the South Africans.
Let's go back to that, to the provinces that you indicate. How will that assist South Africa if we have a central government with no provinces?
Well, I think the original agenda when people were fighting against the oppression was that we need a unitary state. The issue of provinces was never in the agenda. Even people like myself were campaigning for the dissolution of the homeland system, because the homeland system, and including the current system of the provinces, sometimes it revives the ethnic tendencies, where you will find that even allocation of budget and the boundaries of these provinces reminds us of the old system. It becomes worse when these provinces don't have a proper administrators and the systems are collapsing. Therefore, if we review the provincial administration and replace them perhaps with administrators, but more importantly, to monitor the local government, and that we decentralize the workers currently who are working for the provinces to go and reinforce the local government authorities. Mm-hmm. And you cut the middle person, which is a province, from national directly to the local government, so that the people on the ground can, for the first time, feel that they are being looked at this from the center. These provinces, they are a disaster.
Right. Now, General, you are calling for this consultative conference. Have you discussed this with the multi-party parties in Parliament? And is there a sense that they are willing to engage with you on this issue?
Well, the consultative forum is going to be sponsored by the UDM. We'll invite South Africans. We don't have to go to political parties. So this is our own initiative, and we are discussing that strategy this coming Friday as UDM. Then we will issue the invitation and also determine which date would be suitable. Because you know that you heard that the ANC president at one stage in Parliament said he doesn't think that there is a need for South Africans to talk about these issues like economy and so on. We can understand because some of the economic players today are dominated by few families from the ruling party.
So all of this that we talked to relates also to the budget speech that will happen this afternoon. Your expectations from the budget speech, and will there be perhaps a touch on this economic transformation that the president was talking about?
We cannot expect anything from the ANC government. They have failed in the last 22 years. They have never baked this cake to be big enough so that you can feed the nation. Instead, what we have seen, they have been consumers of the little they inherited. So I don't expect miracles from Pravin Gordhan. In fact, the reason why they want to remove him is because he says we can't continue eating from the national treasury, all of us. And that's why they want to now replace him. So this afternoon, one must expect that there might be a need to raise taxes here and there in order to catch up and come up with a balancing budget for this year.
Yeah.
The other thing which we need to review in this country is the budgeting system. This 3-year budget cycle system is not working because they are going to come and mention all these billions and trillions today. But later on, when the people want to spend this money, they tell you, no, this year, in the next 6 months, we'll give you 3 billion instead of that 30 billion or 10 billion we mentioned. And towards the end of this year, they are going to say we are revising the estimates. It's a very system which is complicated. I see it as just a propaganda. You mentioned these trillions and billions, but on the ground, there's nothing.
Yes.
What you are seeing on the ground is protests every day. Where is this money going to? Which means they are misleading the public.
All right, General, thank you so much for your time in joining us in our parliamentary studios.
Thank you.
That was General Bantu Olomisa. His stake, he's the UDM's leader, calling for the National Consultative Conference, which must evaluate the agreements between the ruling party as well as the apartheid government pre and during the CODESA negotiations. Let's now take a look at where we are right now. And of course, there's a number of questions that we pose to you as well on the poll, as well as on the question. You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle. But let's go over now to Evan.
Yeah, it's been a difficult start to the day, hasn't it? Now, we're going to be back at Parliament in a short little time to get an update there. Our picture of the day, meanwhile, which we missed a little bit earlier. Let's just take a look at this. It comes from Military Veterans in its captions. Doctors involved in treating former President Nelson Mandela during his last days were awarded medals by President Jacob Zuma during Armed Forces Day. There you see those medals being handed out. Now, our comment of the day, this one comes from the Trillis King, and he says, shout out to SANDF members for dedicating their lives to protect our beloved country. You all are our heroes and heroines. Talking about Armed Forces Day, of course, this is something that other countries do that maybe sometimes we don't here in South Africa. Anyhow, let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page right now. The 2016 student protests during the Fees Must Fall movement have the youth wanting Treasury to put more money into education. Then fireworks are expected when the Lesotho National Assembly reconvenes later this week on Friday. And finally, US President Donald Trump delivered his first public condemnation of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States yesterday. You can find all of these and more on our Facebook page. Also go to our SABC News website. Well, that's where we are right now. Let's go over to Tsetse to give us a weather update.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. And in terms of your weather, we're expecting more rainfall towards the central and the northeastern part of South Africa. And those could lead to flooding again towards the northern parts of the Gauteng regions, as well as over the southern part of Limpopo, going towards Mpumalanga province and down towards some parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Widespread showers now stretching all the way up north towards Malawi, as well as over Zambia, and definitely towards Botswana. Do expect similar conditions in terms of rainfall. And then by Thursday, you'll see most of it also moving in that western direction before it turns all the way towards the east again. And for Madagascar, do expect widespread showers just along the west. In terms of your temperatures, take a look at this. Quite a hot day is expected for Windhoek at a maximum of 32 degrees. Sunny skies are expected along the southern interior, and a cool weather for PE at a maximum of 23 degrees. Yeah, the rest of South Africa is in fact expected to be a bit warmer, and you'll see most of the temperatures going as high as about 33. Polokwane 22, 19 towards Pretoria, and it is expected to remain into those mid-teens for the northeastern side. But as you move further up north along Botswana and Zimbabwe, you'll see temperatures going as high as about 28 degrees for Gaborone and Bulawayo. Windhoek also do expect similar conditions with warm to slightly hot conditions there. Libreville is at 29, partly cloudy skies with a bit of moisture and rain towards Brazzaville and Kinshasa, and they are both into the mid-30s. Along the northeastern side, temperatures are a lot cooler. Kampala 23, and then 26 is expected for Addis Ababa. But you expect a hot day for Banjul at a maximum of 39. And then again, take a look at this rainfall now coming in from Morocco, stretching towards Algeria. But the rest expected to be clear, dry, sunny conditions across the Sahara Desert, and a bit of rain also for Gabon, going towards some parts of Cote d'Ivoire. And for all those that are going to be along much of the west coast of Africa, do expect some slightly rainy conditions. There, sunny skies towards the east on the opposite end. Damascus at 17, 10 for Baghdad, and Riyadh reaching a maximum of 26 degrees. Agadir is at 32, but much cooler weather for Rabat, Las Palmas, as well as Marrakech. They are just around 18 degrees for all three of those cities up North Africa. But the rest are expected to be much hot. Niamey at 38 degrees. And then again, partly cloudy skies are expected for places such as Abidjan, Lagos, but not so much for Conakry and Dakar. It's mostly going to be quite sunny there. And N'Djamena, as usual, very, very hot weather at a maximum of 37 degrees. And again, those sunny conditions prevailing for much of the afternoon. So those hot conditions coupled with some stormy weather is what you need to look out for the day. And please be extra careful of localized flooding because of heavy rainfall that is expected over the central parts. That's why I leave it for the weather. There should be more later. Do stay tuned.
SABC News brings the world closer to you.
Sherman Bryceby's SABC News, Washington.
I said SABC News in London.
News on the Limbejo SABC, Sochi, Russia.
I'm Sarah Kimani signing off from Kigali for the SABC News.
Other than that, I've enjoyed every single moment of it.
Crisaldo Lewis, SABC News at Wits University.
SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Being orphaned at an early age propelled him to better heights.
When I was 16, my mother passed away, and I had no choice then to find work, and I had to juggle work between work and school. I've worked on different coffee shops, and eventually in 2012, I started my own business called City's Brew.
Laying good business acumen since childhood nurtured her good standing.
I happened to grow up in a family where my father is a businessman. And as a businessman, he used to have lots of friends from different parts of the world. Business, you need to be committed. You need to live it. You need to love it. You need to be there, at the moment.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Jumbo Africa. This is the second hour here on the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Bakhamat.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now today the focus falls on the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan as he prepares to deliver his tightest budget speech yet. Now the one thing that you can be sure of, yes you, you'll be forking out more towards personal income tax at the end of this day. That's why we're asking this, Kendall.
Absolutely.
Question, Kendall.
Yeah, no. I'm feeling the pinch already. I don't know what he's going to say, but I'm feeling it. And we're asking you, what are you hoping to hear from the Finance Minister's budget speech later today?
Yes, that's what we're asking you. You can let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. And also we're conducting a poll with some economists predicting that the Finance Minister could increase value-added tax and corporate taxes. So we're asking you, would you be happy with a VAT increase today? There's the poll. Kendall, what have we got?
Well, we've got 174 votes that have come in, and 13% say yes, they'd be okay with in fact, happy with the VAT increase today, and 87% say no, not happy with that idea.
Well, let's see what people have got to say about that. Let's take a look at some of the comments coming through on the question that we posed. This one from Sishle says, in terms of VAT issues, they should start to increase the salaries. Otherwise, VAT must fall, says Sishle.
IH Nazo comes in with no increasing VAT will frustrate the poor and prices of food will drastically increase. And he's got more to say.
Yes, and that is so true, IH Nazo. Siafana says, no, I'm not happy at all because our salaries are not increasing, but they still wanted to increase the VAT.
And Lechasa Batlamullo, big no with bold letters, VAT should not be increased today. The reason being I'm still earning the same salary, increased dollar law.
Nothing, no increase.
Interesting enough, you know, it's been said that South Africans are the most highly taxed nation, one of the more highly taxed nations in the world, which include everything that we get taxed on, from fuel levies to everything else that we get taxed on.
Yes, well, there you have it. So what's your take on it? I'd like to get your thoughts, let us know. But let's get down to business. Take a look at your news headlines. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan will today deliver his budget speech as the country's economic growth remains low. Emergency services across the country remain on high alert as heavy rain persists. And the Human Rights Commission has appealed to communities across the country to refrain from taking the law into their own hands following attacks on foreign nationals. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's hear from Kendall. What's happening on the sports front?
Well, Elvis, thank you very much. Quite a lot happening on the sports front, both in and off the sports field, both in boardrooms and everywhere else. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And it hit that one down the ground as well for 4. But it doesn't matter. Back-to-back boundaries, and Kane Williamson affords himself a smile because his side have levelled the series.
New Zealand ends South Africa's purple patch in ODIs, beating the Proteas by 6 runs to level the 5-match ODI series 1-1 in Christchurch.
He's pressing down now. Billions! Sundowns grab the leads.
Mamelodi Sundowns have cranked up their bulldozer, moving up the upper log with a 2-1 victory over Platinum Stars as they turn their focus from CAF to the league.
Lovely touch to Silva. Sane straight offside. Aguero with the run in behind. Aguero! Sane!
It was raining goals in Manchester as a brilliant City outgunned Monaco 5-3 in the last 16, first leg thriller of a tie.
Absolutely amazing.
Now, all this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, around about 10:40 or so. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. At least 6 people have died during heavy rains across the country in the past few days. The bodies of 3 people who went missing in the Northern Cape when the Orange River burst its banks have been found. Police are still looking for a 4th person. It has been raining heavily in Limpopo, in Gauteng and the northwest, and motorists have been warned to be extra vigilant on the wet roads and not risk driving across flooded bridges. Communities living in low-lying areas remain on high alert. The South African Weather Service is warned of flash floods as wet weather conditions are expected to persist throughout the week. Now, it's a story that we've seen throughout the entire country with persistent rain. Let's find out from Tsetsi Monare what is happening with the weather. Tsetsi, it was raining this morning when I woke up, when I went to bed last night, and it keeps on raining.
Yes, actually, and it's been raining for the last 2 or 3 days and in just torrential amounts. A lot of rainfall over a short period of time, which is what's leading to flash flooding, what you've been seeing in places such as KwaZulu-Natal coastline, here in Gauteng, driving especially low-lying areas, especially on bridges. Those have been quite flooded mostly. If you heard about the stories in the Northwest Province and also the Vaal River actually, the Orange River, excuse me, not the Vaal River. The Orange River also, almost breaking its bank in certain places. So that's what's leading to incremental water just on properties or on places where we should be.
Now, people were saying that we just come through a drought and now we get all this rain.
Yeah, that's also one of these sad things about Mother Nature is that when we go through a period of drought like that, things like drainage systems, they sort of they get clogged. And when rainfall comes in a short period of time, it comes mostly in fast-flowing, sort of erosion-driven water. And it doesn't really sink in, it doesn't stay in the ground. And the soil has been so dry for such a long time, it becomes a bit more compact. And it has no way of actually keeping the water filtering all the way downwards. So what happens is it just rolls all down. And what you're seeing in localized flooding situations where in urban areas you get these drainage systems that are clogged by garbage or dustbins or, also...
Or even motels, they call them.
Yes, exactly. So that's what then happens, that you see a lot of rainfall in just a short period of time. It moves everything, it blocks all the pores that we all need, and it breaks riverbanks, it breaks bridges, and causes havoc.
Take us through what we can expect.
Well, in terms of what we can expect in a lot of, or in our weather systems, is that there's more rainfall to come through, especially for the next 2 or 3 days towards the northeastern part of South Africa. And for all those that are going to be in places such as the Northwest Province, if you're going to be in Gauteng, especially along the West Rand, and also some part of the East Rand, you should expect a bit more rainfall for the next 2 or 3 days. And that is not going to change situations much. You can see there's a bit of a low pressure cell just moving in along the southern parts of Madagascar, also along the southern parts of Botswana. And that's what's leading to a lot more rainfall coming through. And yes, it is going to last for a few more days. And we must just remember it is also not that much linked to Dineo. Dineo also passed already with its associated storms and rainfall.
Well, there you have it from Tsetsi Monare. You can't expect much from Dineo. She's left already and she's taken the house as well. Well, let's move on to other stories making news. The Human Rights Commission has appealed to communities across the country to refrain from taking the law into their own hands. Now, it's condemned the violence in recent weeks directed at foreign nationals and the destruction of property. In the latest incident, more than 20 foreign-owned shops were looted in Atteridgeville and the surrounding areas in Pretoria this week.
There's nothing left.
The aftermath of the latest wave of attacks.
It's terrible.
Locals went on the rampage, accusing foreigners of stealing their jobs and drug peddling. A few like Mohammed Munir, still brave enough to operate.
The customer say, why you open shop? You must be closed. I say, no, why I'm closed? Nobody can give me money, I can open shop. So I'm afraid now I'm closed the shop. Just selling like that.
But others are not taking any chances. They say Atteridgeville is no longer safe.
Better we should move out our stuff from here. Better to go now. To stay here, we don't want to lose our life and our stock around here.
Just like Adnan, many others have already packed up.
They all asked to be taken to their places of safety, and obviously for the fear of their life and the safety of their goods, I think they will be closing for now.
With sporadic attacks on foreign nationals seemingly on the increase, there are now fears that it could spread to other areas in Gauteng. Security experts say unemployment and ineffective policing are contributing factors.
Here what we are seeing at the moment, to me, is worrying also. We've seen this in Rosettenville, where the people have complained. They went to the police, reported these things on an ongoing basis, but they are frustrated because they don't see the police acting on that information. This kind of criminal conduct, drug smuggling, prostitution, just continues. So then when the police are, as they see it, inactive or not acting on the information, they take it upon themselves to act.
Following similar attacks in Pretoria West and Rosettenville in Johannesburg, the Human Rights Commission has also raised the alarm.
We are concerned with the fact that that communities first and foremost should not be addressing issues of law and the upholding of the law themselves. They shouldn't be taking the law into their own hands, in other words. And second to that, it is a bit perturbing that these incidents seem to be specifically directed to foreign nationals, which does highlight and does suggest that this might be xenophobic attacks that we're talking about here.
The Commission has also called on SABC to effectively police and investigate crimes highlighted by communities. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, in Attridgeville.
You and me and the rest of South Africa will find out today what tax adjustments we will face when the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan delivers his national budget speech. Now, the Minister also faces the daunting task of keeping debt levels and the budget deficit in check while ensuring that government meets its social obligations.
A budget decides how much to spend, what to spend it on, and how to finance that spending. 10 years ago, then Finance Minister Trevor Manuel made those decisions in a different world. The commodities boom was paying off, the economy was growing at a rate of over 5%, and as a result, tax revenue was healthier, leaving him with a budget surplus. A decade later, past the financial crisis of 2008, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan is in a low-growth environment where government is spending more than the revenue it collects. If government borrows money, it will swell its gross debt to GDP further above 50%. But Investment Solutions economist Lesiba Motata believes Gordhan is working with an outlook that is much better than last year.
So with interest rates likely having peaked and inflation improving going forward and somewhat stronger currency, it should reduce the burden on interest payment, although it will remain the fastest growing.
The country remains wary of a possible credit rating downgrade later this year, which could hurt investment and raise borrowing costs. Ratings agencies Fitch and S&P Global currently places the country one notch above sub-investment grade and will do a review later this year. They will be looking to see what the budget says about some of the state-owned enterprises, which Fitch called contingent liabilities. Fitch is also concerned about a politically uncertain climate, which it says may distract policymakers from improving growth. Treasury said in its midterm budget in October that it will reduce the expenditure ceiling by 10 billion rand. And as we wait for the clouds to clear over the South African economy, the reality is there won't be many winners in this year's budget. Devin Murrigan, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, as we know, the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan is expected to deliver the budget speech later today. Now, experts make their predictions for 2017 in the budget speech, and they say there's still uncertain global economic climate and slow domestic growth. And the dark cloud of a possible ratings downgrade mid-year presents a once again very difficult job for the Finance Minister. We now cross live to our reporter in Cape Town, Francis Heard. A very good morning to you, Francis, and welcome.
Morning, Elvis.
How will the minister juggle it all? How will he maneuver, taking into consideration that South Africa is experiencing low economic growth?
Well, every year we say it's going to be the toughest budget yet, and he's got this balancing act to do, and this year no different. And maybe this is really the most difficult, because as Devon was saying in that piece, you heard at one point the money was rushing in. Then it dried up, and South Africa was still able to make good choices to say we're going to increase social grants, even when times are tough. That's when people need the money. But we've had years and years of low growth, and there's not going to be enough tax revenue coming in, even to meet the expenditure targets that government has. So if they don't change anything, often budget Treasury signals what they're going to do in coming years. And if they just stick to what they've signaled, basically, Elvis, we have this hole to fill. We have a big gap between the money that's coming in, then you take off the debt that you've decided to take, and what we're going to spend. And there's just not going to be enough. So that gap is about 28 billion rand, which is quite significant. And we can't even say that one tax will plug that. Not even VAT, which is a very lucrative tax, political hot potato. But say we even raised VAT, it wouldn't plug that hole. So what's expected is that the minister will give a range of taxes, maybe hitting the wealthiest, possibly not touching companies, the sugar tax, things like that. But this will definitely, if anything is certain, they say death and taxes. For this budget, taxes and quite significant taxes are certain, Elvis.
So the man in the street will definitely cry as from tomorrow, because there will be sin taxes as well. What can we expect then from the minister today in relation to plugging that hole of 28 billion rand that he's looking for? We were speaking to an analyst the other day, and he suggested that there's almost like an investment recession in South Africa.
Yes, so that's why the minister will be very cautious, I think, to touch corporate tax, because our companies are already holding back on investment, and you want them to have the cash, or they need the confidence to spend as well. So that's something that the minister cannot deal with in this budget. But I think he will be very wary about touching corporates. So then we have normal income tax, Elvis, and that is probably where we will see increases. And the question is, can the poor be hit? Probably not likely. And the ANC doesn't want to burden the lower and middle classes that are already feeling the pinch. So maybe that upper bracket, and we already have quite a high tax at the top, 41%, which is globally quite significant, but maybe the minister will even go a little bit higher there. Then we have estate duty, things like that, capital gains tax. So the people, that hits people who have assets like houses, property, companies. So maybe that will go up a little bit, and it's seen as a form of wealth tax. So we're going to see income tax probably go up at the top. Estate duties go up, capital gains tax go up. Then the sugar tax, Elvis, this is something quite new, but Treasury did signal last year that they were considering it to combat obesity. The problem with this tax is if it works, then people will stop buying sugar-sweetened beverages, as it's called, and it won't bring in much revenue. But if we raise taxes, say you could be paying up to a fifth more for a can of Coke, 20% more. So if people continue to buy those cans of Coke and those sugary beverages, that will bring in some revenue. But like I said, it's a very funny tax, because you actually want people to stop buying those goods. So it won't, and we don't know exactly how it'll work. But what I'm expecting is higher income earners to go up, and the sugar tax definitely.
Well, on that bittersweet note, thank you so much for that report there. That's Francis Hurd from Parliament. So, what do you have to say? Remember, we're asking you that question. Do you expect that VAT will go up? And if so, what do you make of that? Let me know what you expect from the Minister's budget today. Now, for even more on the budget, viewers can visit the SABC News website. You can also go to the YouTube channel. You can do that right now. You can visit that website and, of course, the social media platforms. SABC News will not, as you can continue there, SABC News will not only be live streaming on its YouTube channel, but it will also be on our Facebook page. You can keep your eyes locked right here on sabc.co.za/news for the latest on that one. Now, for more on the 2017 budget speech predictions and expectations, we are now joined by the Managing Director of Lahumo Capital, Mahudi Latsoene. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, let's get your expectations from the budget speech later today from the Finance Minister.
No, look, we expect the minister to continue, with the fiscal consolidation that he alluded to, particularly in the medium-term budget towards the end of last year. He needs to raise about 28 billion, and that has to, be done in twofold. One, to try and increase get some funds through the tax system, and also, I think, cutting a bit of spending. That can also assist. There's a lot of wastage, in particular when you look at just the wage bill, the public wage bill. That's the area where a lot of work needs to be done. But also just ensuring that your state-owned enterprises also are, scrutinized and also kept in terms of their excessive spending and wasteful expenditures that we've seen in that area. The tricky one is always going to be on the tax. Which one does he implement? There's been a lot of debates around VAT, personal income tax, corporate tax. We think that the VAT is probably going to be a very sensitive area. I don't see the likelihood of that happening. I think, given the fact that VAT, it basically cut across the whole population, the poor and the rich, and it will have a very regressive impact on the economy. So I think VAT will probably not be increased, but I think if you have no increase on the VAT side, then you then left with the personal income tax, which is very likely that we are going to see an increase there.
Now, some are suggesting that VAT is probably the easiest because everybody then pay in, although the poor is going to suffer. But if that happens, if that is the scenario, will there then perhaps be an issue where the poor will get some relief in terms of the amount of zero-rated foods be increased?
You mean if we get a VAT increase?
Yes. If we have a VAT increase that everybody needs to pay, and the zero-rated foods that's currently available, which amounts to around about 19 or 20 of those foodstuffs, will that then increase in order to supplement the poor?
But when you look at it like that, that will be counterintuitive. That will be countering what you've just done. So, in other words, you've just created a job for yourself, and which is why what makes VAT very tricky, because effectively then you have to identify and say, how do you give back to the poor? You are penalizing them and giving them back at the same time. And also, it's going to be very tricky in terms of just administering that particular, the VAT administration. It's going to be very tricky. The others are suggesting that perhaps we have zero tax or VAT on certain goods that are consumed by the poor, and maybe tax more of the luxury goods. That is also just asking for very administrative nightmare. It's going to be very take a while just in terms of administering that. If we categorize bread as one of the products that is consumed by the poor, also the people that are rich also consume the bread. So it's very difficult. And I think for now, probably the likelihood, especially going in just looking at the economics of the country, I think leaving VAT will be a wise move.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the ANC hinting that this particular speech, the budget speech, will include details of radical economic transformation?
It probably will, but with not a lot of substance, because if you look at the word radicalism itself, it says you need to implement it. I mean, implementing requires you to have the financial muscle to do so. So there's radicalism, but also the question is, do we have the financial muscles, to sort of implement it? And it's some of the rhetorics that you are likely to get, particularly building into the ANC or the conference that is coming through for the government, which is obviously under pressure to try and deliver, particularly on the mandate that I would say they have been slow in delivering on, particularly closing that gap between the haves and the have-not. So implementation will always be a bit of an issue. While it might be said, we heard it from the SONA, but I think implementation is where the tricky part comes in.
Mm-hmm. Now, we earlier spoke about an investment recession in South Africa currently. Do you think that the budget speech will appease the concerns of some of these nervous investors?
I think the minister has an opportunity, especially given the fact that when you look at the current situation, in fact, if I compare between now and sort of last year, 12 months ago, when he presented over the 2016 budget, a couple of things have happened. One, we've had the commodity prices recover, and I think that has created a bit of a relief, particularly on the revenue side. So he presented in a much more favorable, in fact, much better environment compared to what the situation was about 12 months ago. So I think he is likely he's capable, he's able to deliver a budget that is more investor-friendly, and that's what he needs, because we need to start, encouraging investments in this country. We need to make sure that our debt levels are reduced, because it's excessively growing at a very uncomfortable rate, and I think the rating agencies will obviously be watching that. But I think the budget is likely it's capable of being able to achieve that, an investor-friendly type of a budget.
Now, a very interesting point that you mentioned earlier, we need to look at cutting the public wage bill. We also need to look at the SOEs and making sure that they are being managed properly. Now, if we look at that, and when we talk about the ratings agency, S&P as well as Fitch, now they are set to review the country's investment rating in June this year. Now, the finance minister has been very successful to keep the dogs from the door for a while now to avoid that downgrade. Do you think that will be probably one of the things that he will look at in depth and announce that today in terms of how we will manage our state-owned enterprises?
No, certainly. I expect the minister to be very articulate in terms of how these state-owned enterprises are going to be, managed. He's already alluded to that in terms of the medium-term budget. There's a lot of wastage, whether you're talking about the bailout that we continue to give state-owned enterprises such as SAA, whether you're talking Eskom, and all those other, other Transnet, all those other companies. So there is a need to really come, really hard on that to make sure that, we are not seen to be lenient on this companies that are being wasteful in their expenditure. Whether or not that will be achieved by him alone, I think also the political side is what the rating agencies are watching. The instability that is brewing, it's also of a concern. The rating agencies will be watching that because, if we have a little bit of political instability, the Minister of Finance position is threatened, that could undo everything that he would have delivered today.
One of the things that keeps us basically on the precipice of that downgrade is the issue of political certainty. Now, the elephant in the room is the future of the Minister, Pravin Gordhan. Now, if we look at the entire situation, what has been transpiring in the last week, we've heard rumours that Brian Molefe could be sworn in as an MP and could probably catapulted into the finance ministry. If that should happen, and the current finance minister removed from the office after the budget speech, what effect do you think this will have on the economy?
The impact will be very negative, and unfortunately, the poorest of the poorest will be the one that feels the impact of that. I think certainly from where we're sitting, investors are quite happy and comfortable with what the Minister of Finance has done so far. Any adjustment or changes to that position would certainly be very questionable as to the motive and the timing of it when the minister has just delivered the budget. And I think causing the unnecessary instability in that position would certainly be very unfortunate. It really take us back to where we came from, and it would be very unfortunately for South Africa.
Fees must fall is another tricky issue that the minister needs to deal with today. Any expectations there?
We expect him to address that particular issue. It's the issue that was left hanging for a couple of months or previously in the previous budget. But I think he indicated that there is a need, when he accepted the memorandum from the students, there is a need for them to really look at the funding mechanism of the education in this country. You know, whether it's just increasing the fiscus for NEFSAs, it's one aspect. But there are a number of things, and we expect announcement around that particular issue to try and put it to bed. It's a process. It's not one issue that he's going to be able to address at once. But I think it's the one that needs to be looked at. But I think he's going to. He needs to announce the plan around how they plan on tackling that particular issue.
Sir, thank you so much for your time and your views this morning here on the Newsroom.
Thank you.
That was the Managing Director of Lahumo Capital, Maudi Lantwane, at our Parliamentary studios. What do you make of that? I want to get your thoughts on the question. Do you think that VAT will go up today? And if it does, how will it impact on you? Plus, what do you expect from the minister? On our poll as well as on our question there, it's on your screen right now on the question, what are you hoping to hear from the Finance Minister's budget speech today? Pravin Gordhan is supposed to do that this afternoon, as well as on the poll. But right now, let's take a break, and we'll be right back after that.
If you ask this Irish master whiskey distiller why sometimes whiskey is spelled with an E and sometimes without, he'd say,
"Oh, to be sure. You feel so good, look. It's the whole thing. They're back and get off in the whiskey without the E."
Yeah, didn't catch that. But if you asked us the difference, we'd tell you that every whiskey from around the world is spelled without the E, except for Irish and American whiskies. Get a bottle of Ballantine's finest blended Scotch whiskey for $149.99 from Tops at Spar.
Breaking news. The High Court in Pretoria has declared South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court as unconstitutional and invalid. Let's now find out from our reporter on the scene, Eldrin Sampier, who's been following the judgment. A very good morning to you, Eldrin. And what does this judgment mean for President Jacob Zuma and the executive?
Well, basically, judgment means, as the instruction as per this full bench of the North Gauteng High Court, is that the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, the minister who heads that department, as well as the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, and President Jacob Zuma have now been instructed to revoke the notice that was sent to the UN last year with regards to the ICC notice to withdraw from the ICC. The court here saying that the procedure that was followed by the executive is not procedural, it was unconstitutional and therefore invalid. The other issue is around what government should have done is that while we have international, the ICC international laws, which doesn't require Parliament to first have debates around repealing, which doesn't require Parliament to have a debate around them repealing a law before sending the notice to withdraw, is that what should have happened is that government should have first sat down with the Parliament, excuse me, government should have first sat down with Parliament and they should have had this discussion around repealing the law. And you know that this was an argument by the DA which has been arguing that the procedure that has been followed by the executive was not procedural and therefore unconstitutional. As per the ICC rules, there is no obligation from the ICC on the member states that they first have debate in Parliament with regards to withdrawing from the ICC. However, though, what this court is stressing is that there are domestic laws in South Africa that deals with how government is supposed to repeal laws. And one of those procedures is, of course, having to speak to Parliament, have a debate in Parliament, and then you have this law to repeal. Of course, now we know that the bill to repeal is already in effect. Parliament has already started that, and that is under consideration. The DA is saying that they hope that this High Court ruling will get Parliament to stop the current debate around around repealing the law and help it reconsider the decision. What the court didn't do today is that the court didn't decide on the argument from the DA which looks into the decision to withdraw. It only focused on the procedure to withdraw, and the court obviously saying that powers lie with the executive with regards to withdrawing. The other issue is, of course, what happens now, considering that we've had all international players and commentators, including the Botswana government, that has said that the decision taken by South Africa was irrational. South Africa shouldn't have made that decision in the first place.
Does government have an option to appeal the judgment?
Yes, of course, government does have this option to appeal the judgment, but we'll have to wait and see what government says. So I've been trying to get a hold of the Minister of Justice with regards to this decision that has been taken place right now, that has been handed down. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get through to him. We also tried to speak to the Ministry of Dirko, but they've instructed us to speak to the Ministry of Justice. So now we just wait for some feedback with regards to that, whether they will be appealing. However, though, the DA is expecting that government will be appealing, and they've indicated that they will be challenging this High Court ruling, or rather they will be challenging the appeal.
Eldrin Sampear, thank you so much for that update. Breaking news there, as you heard from our reporter Eldrin Sampear, telling us that the High Court in Pretoria has now declared South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court as unconstitutional and invalid. We'll keep you updated on that story as it unfolds. Now, as Minister Pravin Gordhan prepares to deliver his tightest budget speech yet, the one thing that you can be sure of is that you'll be forking out more towards personal income tax. From a property perspective, Yawit's property CEO Herschel Yawit says that existing homeowners and first-time homeowners shouldn't expect any relief. He says that the two areas for relief tax are to either reduce the transfer duty percentage or increase the current threshold of 750,000. Now, we spoke to Herschel Yawit, the owner of Yawit's Properties, earlier.
Budget speech. I think the economy is slow. I think government is under pressure to raise money. Lots of expenditure challenges, including subsidised university education. So I think that tax relief across the whole budget is going to be few and far between, and that includes the residential property sector.
Yeah. Now, you've indicated, and I quote, that with virtually no economic growth in 2016, Treasury will be hard-pressed to offer any tax relief in the residential property sector, close quote. Expand on that thought of yours.
So I think the government is under pressure to raise funding. From what I understand from the Treasury figures, they're projecting to raise about 8 billion rand for the 16-17 financial year from transfer duty. And the question is, whether they can, given their pressures that they are under to raise money, whether they can offer any transfer duty relief which benefits buyers, or whether they can offer any capital gains tax relief which benefits sellers. And my view would be that we're not going to see any relief for buyers or sellers in terms of the taxes they have to pay for residential property.
Why is that, you think?
Well, I think that firstly, property prices or property price growth has been quite subdued over the last year. So 2 years ago or the year before, the threshold below which transfer duty is not payable was increased from 600 to 750,000 rand. So it was a 20% increase. and which was quite a generous concession from Treasury. And I think once again, I think property prices have grown very slowly. I don't think Treasury is going to see a need to raise that threshold, and I'm not sure they can afford to. They've also significantly raised the rate at which transfer duty is payable, especially at the luxury end of the market. So once again, I think they've given concessions at the lower end of the market, raised transfer duty percentages at the top end of the market, and I don't think this year they're going to give anything back.
Now, I indicated the 750,000 rand, which is the threshold. What do you think should be done in order to maybe boost the subdued growth that we've seen within the property sector?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think firstly, just financially, I think consumers are under pressure, as we read about all the time, with disposable income, increase in property prices, or sorry, increase in petrol prices, increase in food prices, increase in cost of living, cost of electricity. So I think that consumers are hoping that we're going to get some income tax relief, and if consumers have more money in their pockets after paying their income tax each month, you know, what they may do is decide to invest it in properties. I think that's the first step, and I think the second step is consumer confidence. So what we're looking for is a sound, prudent, responsible budget from the finance minister, which will make people feel confident about how the finances of this country are being managed.
A lot of speculation around VAT and an increase towards that. How would that impact on the property industry?
So once again, I mean, the increase in VAT, there are certain food items and other items that I think are VAT exempt, but VAT is a very, very broad-based tax that impacts everyone at all spectrums of income. And I think once again, it would put pressure on people's disposable income. It takes money out of people's pockets. And once again, for those marginal buyers, for first-time buyers where rands and cents count, it would just make it that much more difficult for them to afford to get into the residential property market.
If we don't hear what you want to hear from the budget from the finance minister today, what does the market look like, the property market that is, for the year ahead?
I think once again, I think we're going to see a fairly subdued market as we did in 2016. So there is demand. People are looking to buy, but I think buyers are cautious. They're conscious of the economy. They're conscious of their own disposable income. And I think that people want to see some good news generally out of this country. And I think those factors will contribute to a gradually growing residential market, but certainly no fireworks.
Your advice for first-time buyers?
My advice to first-time buyers is get into the market. So, you know, if you can't afford your dream home the first time round, look further afield, look for something smaller, look for something in a less expensive area. Because over time, I think it's proven that getting into the property market over time builds up wealth and allows you to elevate your lifestyle and your wealth creation.
But early. Meanwhile, the ANC has hinted that the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan's budget speech will include details of radical economic transformation. Political parties say that Gordhan will have little fiscal space to maneuver when he tables the budget. The Minister of Finance accounts to the Standing Committee on Finance, who also have to approve the budget before me and you can hear the contents of that budget. The person in charge of that process is the chair of the committee, Yunus Karim. Morning Live spoke to him a little bit earlier.
Office, which is an independent advisory service to the committees that deal with finance and budget issues, briefs us the day before the budget, which they did yesterday, and then the four committees, the appropriations and finance committees in both houses, then meet with the minister after having heard the budget this afternoon, as with the public. We meet with him on a Thursday, that's tomorrow, and then we begin the process. The Money Bills Act provides a very strict time frame within which we must process the budget in the both houses, and the parliamentary committees have consistently held that the deadlines are far too tight. That's set out in the Act. And in fact, the Act itself, which was passed by Parliament, not the Executive, is a subject of a major review. And we hope to finalize that review by October this year, so that next year, this time, we'll be operating within a Money Bills Act that provides for slightly better timeline so that Parliament can be more effective in its oversight role. So we get locked up, as it were, in a room, that's the 4 committees, and we begin to review the budget at 10 this morning. We're not allowed to exchange with the outside world on what we read, and then we obviously, from there, move on to the budget this afternoon and the procedure I just set out to you.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. That gives us a little bit of a background understanding as to how the whole process works. Let's break it down a little bit, and there's some, particularly 2 issues that I want to delve a bit into. First one being FIFA. We saw some developments yesterday. Talk to us about this.
Yes, well, it's not directly related to the budget, but briefly, the President returned the bill to Parliament on the grounds that one of its provisions, that is the inspectors of the Financial Intelligence Centre, are allowed to carry out warrantless searches without warrants in certain limited circumstances. The President's lawyers argued that the scope within which the inspectors could operate was still too wide and unconstitutional. So it isn't a policy issue. We simply put the matter before an independent lawyer, Advocate Semenya, in our case, Parliament, but National Treasury also appointed senior counsel, and that was Jeremy Gauntlet. Both argued that the provision in the bill as it is constitutional. The committee had 2 choices, either to return the bill as is, back to the President for him to make a decision on, one of which is to refer the matter himself to the Constitutional Court, or the committee could decide, they argued, that it could clarify some uncertainties or any misunderstandings that might occur, and they even provided some appropriate wording. So what the committee did simply is take what Advocate Semenya and Advocate Gauntlet said and use that as a basis to effect some amendments around providing greater clarity that the inspectors are seeking to merely check that the provisions of the Financial Intelligence Act are adhered to. And secondly, what we did was to avoid any misunderstandings, made it very clear they do not pursue criminal action. If any such matter has to be pursued, it's by the South African Police Service and related security services. So that's what we essentially did. And yesterday we voted on it. Yeah. The matter will be referred to the National Assembly, and presumably by next week or the week after, the House will vote on the matter.
Okay, so that's an update on FIFA, if people are following that quite closely. I want to delve into it deeply, but we can't, unfortunately, due to time. I want to talk more about the budget now. SARS, the question is, has SARS raised the money it's targeted for the year so far?
Well, firstly, with low growth rates at about 0.4%, revenues are obviously down. Yeah. The minister in the medium-term budget policy statement last October projected that there'll be a 23 billion rand shortfall for this financial year. And of course, the big question is going to be, he's still projecting to raise 28 billion rand additional revenue in the new financial year, 2017-2018. So obviously, everybody's interested to know how he will raise that money.
Taxes.
Yes. Well, there's various forms of taxes. Personal income tax makes up about 34-36% of the total taxes. VAT, value-added tax, about 26%, and corporate tax is about, I think, 17.8%. So obviously, the public will be interested to know where he draws his additional revenue from and which form of tax.
I mean, it's a big shortfall, and I think South Africans are in for a tough ride. He's going to get that money, and unfortunately, you know, we're the ones that he's going to get that money from. So, can we warn South Africans for quite a harsh budget coming our way?
Well, I'm not sure it'll be a harsh budget. It'll be budget knowing the minister and the ministry and treasury, appropriate to the times. Basically, you've got weak global growth. But on the other hand, what you're finding is that the price of commodities, and our economy is still substantially reliant on mining, is lifting. The drought is beginning to recede. There is some recovery in the global growth, so I think it'll impact on the prospects of growth. This current financial year, growth is projected around 0.4%. For the next year, according to the minister's budget policy statement last October, it's about 1.3%. So things will be better in that sense. But ultimately, the issue is we need economic growth. Yeah. And that's not the responsibility of government alone. Government has to work with business, with civil society, the trade unions included, to ensure economic growth. And we need consensus, a national consensus around growth. And of course, the minister is under some pressures. The ANC's Lekgotla set out radical economic transformation as the framework for this budget, and so did the Cabinet Lekgotla. And of course, in the State of Nation address, the President set out that we need radical economic transformation. So I think much of the money for radical economic transformation will come from a reprioritization of the existing budget and obviously additional sources of revenue, limited though they may be. And I think that essentially what the President said is that by radical economic transformation, the ANC and government mean a fundamental change in the structures, the systems, the institutions and patterns of ownership, control and management of the economy in the interest of all South Africans, but especially the poor, which is set out as mainly African and female. So that's the framework. It's not as if it'll dramatically happen overnight. In fact, aspects of the radical economic transformation are being implemented anyway. It's a faster, quicker, more decisive implementation. And I think the issue is to contain unnecessary expenditure, to be more efficient in spending, to reduce the levels of waste and mismanagement, to act against public servants who waste resources, far more decisively in terms of the Public Finance Management Act and other laws. And it's also about ensuring that Parliament is far more effective, not just our committee, committees in general, in exercising oversight of how money is spent by the respective ministers and departments.
It certainly is a massive day for South Africans as we all await that budget speech. Good morning to you. My name is Kendall Makamate, and it's now time for the sports. The New Zealand cricket side has handed South Africa their first one-day international loss in 13 outings in Christchurch this morning. The Kiwis beat the Proteas by just 6 runs in a nail-biting encounter at the Hagley Oval. The series is now square at 1-1 with 3 matches remaining.
I think New Zealand batting first will hope that the wicket doesn't offer too many surprises here.
South African skipper AB de Villiers won the toss and sent the home side into bat first. By the 13th over, 2 wickets had fallen and New Zealand were on 53 for 2. Ross Taylor, however, got the home side back on track. He became his country's leading ODI century maker as he smashed an unbeaten 102, his 100 coming off the last ball of the innings.
Magnificent history for Ross Taylor.
Taylor and Jimmy Neesham, with 71, formed an unbroken partnership of 123 runs, as the hosts finished on 289 for 4. The Proteas' wickets fell at regular intervals. Opener Hashim Amla, the first to go for just 10.
The dangerous Amla is gone.
Only wicketkeeper Quinton de Kock and Dwayne Pretorius managed to go past the 50-run mark. De Kock smashed 6 fours as he hit 57 off 65 deliveries.
Another fine half-century for him, his 11th in one-day internationals.
Pretorius, who earlier took 2 for 40, made 50 off just 27 balls. His valiant effort included 4 fours and 2 sixes.
That is some shot, that.
It was, however, too little too late. Andile Pehlokwayo was unbeaten on 29, but the South Africans were restricted to 283 for 9, just 6 runs short of achieving a new successive ODI match-winning record.
I wasn't too unhappy about the bowling performance. It's more about the bat. I thought there were quite a few soft dismissals, not enough good partnerships. And the ones that we did actually get going, the good partnerships that started, we didn't extend. So it's crucial to do that if you want to win games of cricket.
The action now moves to Wellington, where the 3rd ODI will take place on Saturday. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now, Mamelodi Sundowns are now 4 points behind log leaders Kaizer Chiefs. This after their 1-0 win over Platinum Stars at the Royal Bafokeng Stadium in Phokeng, Rustenburg. Sundowns, who collected 29 points after 13 games, have played 5 games less compared to table toppers Chiefs.
Just days after being crowned the 2017 CAF Super Cup champions, Mamelodi Sundowns returned to the Absa Premier League action on a rainy Tuesday evening. The league champions travelled to Rustenburg high in confidence after overcoming their Congo giants TP Mazembe in the Super Cup final over the weekend. However, they visited a team in need of a win ahead of the contest. The Platinum Stars were 14th on the log with the 2 points clear of the relegation zone. The game got off to a lovely start with the visitors looking more likely of the two teams to open the scoring. That man again Percy Tau in the thick of things. It was not long though before the champions of Africa took the lead. Timbers won with an easy tap-in after Veras Haji's lovely cutback from the left wing. Despite being a goal to the goat, the Brazilians did not show any signs of slowing down, committing numbers forward in search of a 2-goal cushion. However, Sundowns, who scored a total of 7 goals in their last 2 league fixtures, appeared to be wasteful in front of goals. 1-0, that's how the scoreline read at the break. The home side pulled one back just after the break. There was no denying Sundowns 3 points. Percy Tau and Kamabiliat combining well before the current PSL player of the season scored the winning goal. Joseph Mohali, SABC News.
Now, of course, Kaizer Chiefs will remain top of the log if Wits do not win their match against Baroka FC tonight. But more about all of that a little later in the next hour. But it was raining goals in the UEFA Champions League first leg last 16 matches last night, with 14 goals scored in just 2 matches. Sergio Aguero starred as Manchester City beat Monaco 5-3 in an end-to-end encounter at the Etihad Stadium. City came from behind and scored 3 goals in the last 19 minutes to take a 2-goal lead heading into the return leg.
It's just 2 of the last 26 in all.
A string of defensive errors allowed Monaco to take control of the match despite City's perfect start. Raheem Sterling gave Manchester City the advantage with a 26th minute goal after fine work by Leroy Sané. But Monaco led at the break, courtesy of a Radamel Falcao's header and Kylian Mbappe's powerful rising drive.
There's the pace, there's the potential, there's the lethal finishing. Monaco have a second away goal at Manchester City.
Then a blunder by Monaco keeper Subasic gave Sergio Aguero his first goal.
What a dreadful moment for the keeper. He couldn't care less.
But Monaco's vibrant attacking ambition means this tie is far from over.
Aguero, Sané! The referee has a look. The referee has a check. Sané celebrates. He was onside. Manchester City, absolutely amazing.
Atletico Madrid beat hosts Bayer Leverkusen 4-2 to take a firm grip on their Champions League last 16 tie ahead of the return leg in Spain next month. The Bundesliga club, finalists in 2002, are now at risk of missing out on the last 8 for a 5th time. 2 lethal counter-attacks in the opening 25 minutes put the 2014 and 2016 finalists in the driving seat with Saul Niguez and Antoine Griezmann on target. Then Leverkusen cut the deficit 3 minutes after the restart through Karim Bellarabi. Atletico's Kevin Gamero scored from a penalty spot before a Stefan Savic's own goal set up a nervous finale. Fernando Torres ended any speculation with a goal in the 86th minute to take revenge for last season's 1-0 loss as the Germans suffered their first home defeat in Europe after a 10-match unbeaten run.
2-goal advantage restored again.
Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, with just a few days to go until the start of Super Rugby 2017, the Stormers have abandoned their policy of having 2 squad captains, which they adopted last year and opted to name flanker Siya Kolisi as their leader, and his deputy will be hardman Eben Etzebeth. The 2 were part of a leadership group of 4 identified by coach Robbie Fleck, which included the injured Juan de Jong and utility back Dylan Lades. Now, Kolisi has been part of the Stormers setup since 2012 when he replaced the injured veteran Skalk Berger. He's returning from a long-term injury, which he sustained on the eve of the Rugby Championship. The 25-year-old, who's played 76 times for the franchise, is one of the most experienced players in the Stormers squad, which is full of potential but lacks a bit of experience. Kolisi's first assignment will be in the North versus South derby this coming Saturday when the Stormers host the Bulls in Cape Town. And that's where we'll leave it for now. We'll be back with more at the top of the hour. You're watching Newsroom. Stay close. Don't go anywhere.
animation, virtual reality and games. We have all of that and other technology and social media news.
I've got the full version of the game at home, so I play it a lot at home.
We also tell you how Africans are using tech to improve their lives.
We have to close the digital gap.
So join us on Network for your African technology and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA Parliamentary?
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the old Parliamentary case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
It's the final hour here on the Newsroom. It is 1100 hours Central Africa time. My name is Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makamat.
Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome. Now, today, we focus on a very important issue, and that is the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan. Now, he's preparing to deliver his tightest budget speech today. And one thing is for sure, that you will be paying more on your personal income tax. So we're asking you the question, Kendall.
You know, it's a very tough question to ask, but it has to be asked because that's what today is about. And it really is about what you want to hear and are hoping to hear from the Finance Minister's budget speech later today. What is it that you think he'll be saying, and what is it that you hope he'll be saying?
Yeah, all your hopes and dreams and aspirations in that question. So we're conducting a poll with some economists predicting that the Finance Minister could increase VAT, or value-added tax, as well as corporate taxes. So the question we pose to you on our poll, before we even get to the comments, let's see if we can put up the poll again there. Question at see how far that poll is in terms of where we stand with the numbers. 87% of the 187 votes in says no, we are not happy with the VAT increase today.
100%. If that was one of his agenda points, we already know that 87% of our viewers will not be happy with a VAT increase if it is one of his agenda points.
I hope the minister is watching, because only 13% of you are saying yes, we are happy with a VAT increase. Keep coming. Let's take a look at what you have to say in relation to the question. Ntelele says he should for once allocate the money to early childhood development. Very good point there, which has been overlooked since the dawn of democracy. Ntelele, I must tell you, that is a critical point.
Lechasa says, I'm expecting the Finance Minister to increase the price of tobacco, alcohol and SASSA grants. Smoke of tobacco is killing us.
The Fighter says it's pointless to increase cigarettes and alcohol, because the people that suffer the most is the poor people. They must subsidize these people that drink so much, says Fight, huh? These are some of your comments coming through. Let us know what's on your mind. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at the news headlines. Breaking news, the High Court in Pretoria has declared South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court is unconstitutional and invalid. The Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, will today deliver his budget speech as the country's economic growth remains very slow. And emergency services across the country remain on high alert as heavy rain persists. So if you're driving today on those roads, please be careful. Switch on your headlights so everybody can see you and drive slowly. But right now, let's take a look at what's happening in the sports front with Kendall Wakamata.
Elvis, it was a beautiful night of football last night. Lots on the go, lots of attacking football, great, lots of mistakes, but beautiful goals at that. That's what we're bringing to you in sports this morning. Good morning to you. This is what you can expect to see at 11:35.
And it hit that one down the ground as well for 4. But it doesn't matter. Back-to-back boundaries, and Kane Williamson affords himself a smile because his side had levelled the series.
New Zealand ends South Africa's purple patch in ODIs, beating the Proteas by 6 runs to level the match, 5-match ODI series 1-1 in Christchurch.
Here's pressing down now. Brilliant! Sundowns grab the leads.
Mamelodi Sundowns have cranked up the bulldozer, moving up the Upsilog with a 2-1 victory over Platinum Stars as they turn their focus from CAF to the league.
Lovely touch to Silva. Sane straight offside. Aguero with the run in behind. Aguero! Sane!
It was raining goals in Manchester as a brilliant City outgunned Monaco 5-3 in the last 16, first leg thriller of the tie.
Absolutely amazing.
And of course, we'll be bringing you a little bit of an update, if we can get it, of the FIFA meeting that's happening right here in Johannesburg a little later. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The High Court in Pretoria has declared South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court is unconstitutional and invalid. The application was brought forward by the Democratic Alliance after government announced its decision to withdraw from the ICC last year, following a dispute in 2015 over a visit by the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir.
In the present case, that an order of suspension is not appropriate, nor is an order limiting the retrospectivity of the effect of the declaration of invalidity, given the inherent urgency of the matter. It's our conclusion. In any event, government respondents did not make out a case for such an order, although the Council on their behalf faintly suggested that we should consider suspension. As a result, the order of invalidity is with retrospective effect, and no order of suspension would be made. Having found that the notice of withdrawal is invalid for the reasons discussed in this judgment, a declaratory order to that effect must be made. But to constitute an effective remedy, that declaration should be accompanied by an order directing government respondents to revoke the notice of withdrawal. Lastly, we have applied our mind to the question of course as we must. The general principle as far as that is concerned in constitutional litigation were laid down by the Constitutional Court in affordable medicines and buy-watch cases. relevant to the present case is that in constitutional litigation between a private party and the state, if the private party is successful, it should have its costs paid by the state, while if unsuccessful, each party should pay its own case. The DA has been successful. It is entitled to the costs from the government respondents. However, the costs of 3 counsel are not warranted. Costs for 2 should suffice. With regard to CASEC, we are of the view that it is not entitled to costs. It waited until late to file the application for intervention. Unlike the DA, it elected to file an application for direct access to the Constitutional Court only and not in this court. When that application was dismissed, it found itself not being party to this application, resulting in an application for intervention on an urgent basis. With regard to the supporting respondents, SALC, CHR, and HSF, they are ordinarily, as respondents, not entitled to costs from other respondents, in this regard, government respondents. Therefore, no order of costs as between the supporting respondents and the government respondents should be made. In the result, the following order is made. 1. The notice of withdrawal from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, signed by the first respondent, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, on 19 October 2016, without prior parliamentary approval, is unconstitutional and invalid. 2. The Cabinet decision to deliver the notice of withdrawal to the United Nations Secretary General without prior parliamentary approval is unconstitutional and invalid. 3. The first, second, and third respondents, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, and the President of the Republic of South Africa, are ordered to forthwith revoke the notice of withdrawal referred to in paragraph 1 above. 4. The first, second, and third respondents are ordered to pay the applicant's costs, including costs consequent upon the employment of 2 counsel. 5. There is no order of costs as between the intervening applicant, the first, second, third, sixth, and the 10th respondent. I hand down the judgment.
Well, there you have that judgment. Meanwhile, the national budget speech is almost here. And the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, will announce exactly how the government plans on spending its budget in 2017. As the biggest event in Parliament, besides the State of the Nation address by the President, the budget speech sparks robust debates and emotional debates as well. To continue that discussion, we're joined by our reporter Frances Hurd, and she's also joined by a guest, Dr. Tlabi Leoka, who is an economist at Argon Asset Management. Frances, it's over to you. A very good morning again.
Good morning, Elvis. And let's pick up what you were talking about a little bit earlier, this controversy around VAT. And Elvis, I sometimes wonder about the controversy because we could raise VAT by 1% and it'll be a huge hit for the Finance Minister, adding to that hole we were talking about earlier that really needs to be plugged this budget. But it is a political hot potato, and your poll picked up on the fact that perceptions are that it's not good for the poor, it's not good for many South Africans. So let's pick up with Tabi Leoka from Argon Asset Management. And what do you think about VAT? Are we being a bit precious because we could actually zero rate a lot of the goods that poor people buy?
I fully agree. So if you increase VAT by about 1 percentage point, we could actually get or raise about 20 to 25 billion rands, which is quite significant.
Which is basically what we need, 28 billion or so.
We do, but we can't get it, from one area because there are other increases that we can also make. But on the VAT in particular, I looked at South Africa's VAT and compared it with other countries, both developing and developed, and we're actually on the lower end. So our VAT is low compared to international standards. Another thing is that we haven't increased the VAT in over 20 years. That's over 2 decades. And it's currently at 14%. So we could actually afford to increase it slightly. Firstly, because it gives us that 20 to 25 billion that we need, but also that we could, as the consumer, I think the higher income earning consumer can actually afford an increase in VAT.
Do you think possibly, I mean, the ANC took a bit of a hit at local government elections. Cabinet probably hasn't approved VAT. Do you agree? But maybe he will signal for coming years.
Probably signal. VAT does feature in the Davis report, so it is a recommendation. I think that it will be the last resort, especially if you remember that in the SONA, the president did talk about radical economic transformation, and that could go against increasing VAT, could go against radical economic transformation because it will penalize the poor especially. So you need something that if it targets the higher income earners, then it's an equalizer in terms of closing the inequality gap, and it's something that is workable.
I don't know if it can, but can Treasury heed the calls for a more transformative budget? It seems like they always want to signal, they don't want to change things too drastically. They want to talk about this maybe in the future. Is there anything they could do?
Well, their policy, and this is not just Treasury policy, this is government policy, is fiscal consolidation. And this basically means that we are increasing taxes because we have this shortfall that we need to fill. But at the same time, we need to cut expenditure as well in order for us to get the balance right. And obviously, tax increases are not very favorable for a lot of people because given the headwinds that households are faced with, it is quite steep, but it's a necessary thing that we need to do given that we've got this shortfall. And remember that we have a shortfall that the rating agencies have also pointed out, that we need to close the budget deficit and to also close the current account deficit. So this twin deficit is a problem that not only for us, but also for investors who are investing in the country.
Excuse me. Finally, then, if we're not going to hit VAT, some taxes will go up. Do you agree that this budget will be a hard pull, a bitter pull for the higher earners?
It will be. So just to explain, there are 3 areas where we can look at in terms of increasing taxes. That's personal income tax, that's VAT, and that's also corporate income tax. So I'll start with the corporate. We've spoken about the VAT. Corporate income tax, I don't think that it will increase, only because of the fragile business confidence that we've seen in the past couple of years, but also corporate profit growths have also not been spectacular. It is likely, and my probability is high on this, that we could see personal income tax increasing, and that is targeted at the higher income earners. So we could also see a marginal tax. We've seen it before, so the brackets could be widened, again targeting at the higher income earners.
So the top already paying 41%, which I think is worth mentioning, that it's quite high in terms of world standards. So we don't have a wealth tax, but the wealthier are being forced to put back in the coffers. Could that go up to 43, as some are saying?
Very possible. It could go up to 43, but there are other taxes that are non-direct taxes that could go up to alleviate the pressure on the higher income earners. So we could see a sugar tax again, we could see the carbon tax, announcement of a carbon tax, we could see tobacco and alcoholic beverage taxes. So those taxes do contribute to the fiscus. Well.
Always the sin taxes. Thank you so much, Thabi Leoka from Argon Asset Management, and we'll bring you more throughout the day. And of course, we'll take that budget speech live this afternoon and bring you all the reaction following.
All the senses at play there, from bittersweet to a bitter pill. That's all being swallowed there today in our budget speech. That was our reporter Francis Hurt with Dr. Thabi Leoka in Cape Town. I'd like to get and solicit your thoughts on this question. Do you think that VAT will go up? And what is your thoughts on the budget speech this afternoon? What do you expect to hear from the Minister now during today? You can visit the SABC News website, the YouTube channel, as well as our social media platforms. SABC News will not only be live streaming on the YouTube channel, but we'll also do that on the Facebook page. Keep your eyes locked on www.sabc.co.za/news for the latest. Now, the Competition Commission has told Parliament that it's working with the United States authorities in its investigation into bank allegations and allegedly colluding to fix the rand-dollar exchange rate. The Portfolio Committee on Economic Development met with the Commission's Thembinkosi Bonakele.
The South African rand is the most widely traded emerging market currency internationally, and that, according to the Competition Commission, lies behind the alleged collusions by traders to either lower or hike its prices at their discretion. It's also the reason why the Commission is working with US authorities to uncover the true extent of the price fixing.
A lot of this trading occurred in the United States as well. We, together with some of these authorities, we are looking at the same witnesses. And so it was very important that we coordinate so that we don't have a situation where we could compromise each other's investigations.
The Commission also informed MPs that it has signed a conditional immunity agreement with whistleblower ABSA. Citibank has also agreed to testify on its behalf, although it will still pay a 70 million rand fine. The committee chairperson was satisfied with the work done thus far.
We have to deal with these issues so that our economy can be open, transparent, and also be free for everyone to participate fairly so.
The EFF argued that the alleged actions of the banks should open a debate on the nationalization of banks.
They must push hard that these banks be held criminally liable for these extensive acts of criminality that affected millions of South African lives, in particular the poor and working people.
The DA was more concerned about the Commission's possible political considerations in its investigations.
My particular concern is around the timing of the referral and the announcement, and to make sure that no political considerations were brought to bear in influencing those. The Commissioner did reassure us that there were no political considerations.
Banks under investigation are Standard Bank and Investec. Lukhanyo Chalada, SABC News, Parliament.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river, and if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
News on the continent now. The UN's Children's Agency says that nearly 1.4 million children are at imminent risk of death and famine in Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan and Yemen. The UNICEF announcement comes a day after famine was declared in parts of Unity State in South Sudan, where civil war has raged since the late 2013 and where severe inflation has made food unaffordable for many.
People are already starving to death in all 4 countries, and the World Food Programme says more than 20 million lives are at risk in the next 6 months. Famine was formally declared on Monday, February the 20th, in parts of South Sudan. With conflict on the rise, the United Nations is warning of a potential genocide. The children are up to 9 times more likely to die from diseases such as measles, malaria or cholera than a healthy child. UNICEF is calling for funding as well as immediate and sustained access and for political solutions in the 4 countries concerned, which are all affected by conflicts. South Sudan has also been hit by the same East African drought that has pushed Somalia back to the brink of famine, 6 years after 260,000 people starved to death in 2011. UNICEF says 185,000 children are expected to suffer from severe acute malnutrition in Somalia this year, but the figure was likely to rise to 270,000 in the next few months. Famine has been ongoing since last year in parts of northeastern Nigeria. The number of children with severe acute malnutrition is expected to reach 450,000 this year.
Now, for more on the famine crisis, we are joined via Skype by James Elder, the Regional Communications Advisor, UNICEF, Eastern and Southern Africa. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
Now, it seems like the total number of food insecure people is expected to rise to 5.5 million at the height of the lean season in July if nothing is done. What are these countries doing wrong, you think?
Well, you're right. The numbers are extraordinary, and I guess one thing we always I'm reminded of every time I'm in South Sudan or Somalia, is that every number represents a human face, you know, someone with incredible determination and instincts to survival. But yes, right now they're facing odds that are just out of their control. Certainly when we look at what's going wrong, if I was to look at South Sudan, which now has that first famine of any country in the world for 6 years, it's a man-made catastrophe. This is around war and a collapsing economy that's left 100,000 people, including 20,000 kids, facing starvation. So ongoing conflict and then accompanying collapsing economy, at least for South Sudan, that much is very clear.
Mm-hmm. Explain the concept that this particular famine is man-made.
Well, when I look at South Sudan, yes, where the famine has been declared, 3 years of conflict. In July last year, when conflict finally ended and both parties looked at a peace accord, it was incredible to see how quickly everything from business to crops, you know, took growth once again. But that ended very quickly again, and the country has spread into ongoing conflict, not just in a couple of states, but it's broadened. So what that does is, A, you have more than 2 million people fleeing across the country. They flee unspeakable violence, rape consistently used as a weapon of war. As they do that, they leave behind their meagre possessions, they leave behind whatever crops they've got. and they go just in search of safety. At the same time, a collapsing economy means that if they've got any money at all, things are now costing 800 to 1,000 times what they would have costed 12 months ago. It just puts people at the end of the last means to survive, and yet again they look to the international community and aid agencies like UNICEF for support.
Now, a formal famine declaration means that people have already started dying of hunger. Do we know the figures yet?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does, and no one, the United Nations certainly doesn't take that formal declaration lightly. No, unfortunately, we don't know. We know, unfortunately, that people, usually children, because they're the most vulnerable physically, are now dying on a daily basis. A big part of the problem in these particular areas where there's famine, and again, it brings us back to conflict, is that these are the areas that we haven't had access to for a couple of months. So again, we go to a few things that need to happen. The government and the opposition need to respect the peace agreement they've signed. Full access needs to be given to humanitarian workers who are working in what is the most dangerous country for aid workers. That's fine. UNICEF and other staff like World Food Programme will continue to do that, but we must be given access. And when we're there, we must have our safety respected so that people can do that work. And then we are looking to go in the next 48 hours to these areas, and then I guess we'll have a clearer sense of the numbers. But again, right now we know people are dying, and we know that behind these numbers is mums and children who have done everything to survive and have now run out of means.
Now, the IPC report estimates that 14 of the 23 assessed countries have global acute malnutrition or at above the emergency threshold of 15%, with some areas as high as 42%. Does that suggest that we are reaching a worldwide crisis here?
I think so. I think that, again, the United Nations and certainly myself, in 15 years in this business, is very careful not to sort of be hyperbolic, but I think you're spot on. I've not seen anything like it. In these countries, as you've mentioned several times, the common thread has been conflict. But at the same time, when we look at the crisis right now across southern Africa from El Nino, where many of your viewers will be, at the same time in Ethiopia, in northern Kenya, where I am now, this, despite some good governance and some early response, the level of drought and climate change-related impacts has been almost unprecedented. Once we start combining these things, we are, as you say, seeing a kind of worldwide disaster at a time when I think people are continually hit by huge numbers and becoming increasingly apathetic. I guess the message UNICEF keeps trying to bring home to audiences and certainly our donors is that we know what works and we continue to work around the clock on the front line. We just need that access from governments and we need that support to continue from those generous donors at this very difficult time.
Now, let's go back to Sudan because malnutrition is a major public health emergency exacerbated by the widespread fighting in that area. There's also displacement, the poor access to health services. Do you think that countries like South Sudan are able to deal with the situation on their own, or do they need African assistance?
Oh, they absolutely need assistance from across the continent. There is no doubt. There is a lack of fiscal support there. The United Nations agencies that take a great deal of support from countries in the region have taken in their roles around the health, nutrition, the education sectors. So unfortunately, there is no doubt right now that support from across either the political, whether it's political support or humanitarian support, needs to continue occurring. What the government needs to do is, of course, to ensure that its resources are well allocated and at the same time ensure, again, open access to humanitarian workers and respect their safety. But no, right now you have more than 2 million South Sudanese fleeing across their country, tens of thousands of children eating things like wild foods and grass and water lilies. So there's no doubt that this requires all the support from across countries in the region and individuals, of course, who can offer it.
As UNICEF, how are you coping, James?
I think that this has gone on for 3 years, and I think that on one hand, the positive sense is that every day in South Sudan you meet people who've returned, South Sudanese, young people who lived in South Africa or Australia or America and came back to their country because it's their country and they're so positive about the change. On the other hand, you have days where we are seeing women and kids who walk for 40 kilometres only to finally get to help and spend the last 12 hours with their child before that child dies. So, again, UNICEF does know what happens. We're across the country. We do these amazing rapid response missions with helicopters. We'll be flying with the World Food Programme, drop food, treat malnourishment, supply water. But we do need the government to ensure access and safety, and we do need other governments in the region, if they possibly can afford it, to continue to support before this catastrophe does just become unmanageable.
James Elder, I wish you all the best of luck there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the interest.
That was James Elder, the Regional Communications Advisor for UNICEF Eastern and Southern Africa, joining us via Skype. The situation definitely dire. Back to our leading story, though. South Africans will find out today what tax adjustments they face when the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, delivers the national budget. The Minister also faces the daunting task of keeping the debt levels and the budget deficit in check while ensuring that government meets its social obligations.
A budget decides how much to spend, what to spend it on, and how to finance that spending. 10 years ago, then Finance Minister Trevor Manuel made those decisions in a different world. The commodities boom was paying off, the economy was growing at a rate of over 5%, and as a result, tax revenue was healthier, leaving him with a budget surplus. A decade later, past the financial crisis of 2008, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan is in a low-growth environment where government is spending more than the revenue it collects. If government borrows money, it will swell its gross debt to GDP further above 50%. But investment solutions economist Lesiba Mutata believes Gordhan is working with an outlook that is much better than last year.
So with interest rates likely having peaked and inflation improving going forward and somewhat stronger currency, it should reduce the burden on interest payment, although it will remain the fastest growing.
The country remains wary of a possible credit rating downgrade later this year, which could hurt investment and raise borrowing costs. Ratings agencies Fitch and S&P Global currently places the country one notch above sub-investment grade and will do a review later this year. They will be looking to see what the budget says about some of the state-owned enterprises, which Fitch called contingent liabilities. Fitch is also concerned about a politically uncertain climate, which it says may distract policymakers from improving growth. Treasury said in its midterm budget in October that it will reduce the expenditure ceiling by 10 billion rand. And as we wait for the clouds to clear over the South African economy, the reality is there won't be many winners in this year's budget. Devin Murrigan, SABC News, Johannesburg.
So what are your expectations from the budget this afternoon? Are you sitting on tender hooks, perhaps? And what is your reaction to that? What do you expect the Finance Minister to say to you? Let me know what's on your mind on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle. Let's take a look at if there's some comments that came through in the meanwhile to refresh. Well, there's nothing there. But remember that we also want you to participate in our poll. That poll asks you whether or not the VAT will be increased today. Let's take a look where it is now. So far, 187 votes in. 87% of you saying that you are not happy with the VAT increase today, and 13% says, yes, we will be happy with that VAT increase. So keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. Another top story here this morning that we were dealing with. At least 6 people have died during heavy rains across the country in the past few days. The bodies of 3 people who went missing in the Northern Cape when the Orange River burst its banks have been found. Police are still looking for a 4th person. It's been raining heavily in Limpopo, Gauteng and the northwest. Motorists have been warned to be extra vigilant on the wet roads and not risk driving across flooded bridges. Communities living in low-lying areas remain on high alert, and the South African Weather Service has warned of flash floods as wet weather conditions, that is, are expected to persist throughout the week. The Human Rights Commission has appealed to communities across the country to refrain from taking the law into their own hands It's condemned violence in recent weeks directed at foreign nationals and the destruction of property. In the latest incident, more than 20 foreign-owned shops were looted in Attridgeville and the surrounding areas in Pretoria this week.
There's nothing there.
The aftermath of the latest wave of attacks.
It's terrible.
Locals went on the rampage, accusing foreigners of stealing their jobs and drug peddling. A few like Mohammed Munir, still brave enough to operate.
The customer say, why you open shop? You must be closed. I say, no, why I'm closed? Nobody can give me money, I can open shop. So I'm afraid now I'm closed the shop. Just selling like that.
But others are not taking any chances. They say Attridgeville is no longer safe.
Better we should move out our stuff from here. Better to go now. To stay here, we don't want to lose our life and our stock around here.
Just like Adnan, many others have already packed up.
They all asked to be taken to their places of safety. And obviously for the fear of their life and the safety of their goods, I think they will be closing for now.
With sporadic attacks on foreign nationals seemingly on the increase, there are now fears that it could spread to other areas in Gauteng. Security experts say unemployment and ineffective policing are contributing factors.
Here what we are seeing at the moment, to me, is worrying also. We've seen this in Rosettenville, where the people have complained. They went to the police, reported these things on an ongoing basis, but they are frustrated because they don't see the police acting on that information. This kind of criminal conduct, drug smuggling, prostitution, just continues. So then when the police are, as they see it, inactive or not acting on the information, they take it upon themselves to act.
Following similar attacks in Pretoria West and Rosettenville in Johannesburg, the Human Rights Commission has also raised the alarm.
We are concerned with the fact that that communities first and foremost should not be addressing issues of law and the upholding of the law themselves. They shouldn't be taking the law into their own hands, in other words. And second to that, it is a bit perturbing that these incidents seem to be specifically directed to foreign nationals, which does highlight and does suggest that this might be xenophobic attacks that we're talking about here.
The Commission has also called on SABC to effectively police and investigate crimes highlighted by communities. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, in Attridgeville.
Welcome back. It's time for the sports now. The New Zealand cricket side has handed South Africa their first one-day international loss in 13 outings in Christchurch this morning. The Kiwis beat the Proteas by just 6 runs in a nail-biting encounter at the Hagley Oval. The series is now square at 1-1 with 3 matches remaining.
I think New Zealand batting first will hope that the wicket doesn't offer too many surprises here.
South African skipper A.B. de Villiers won the toss and sent the home side in to bat first. By the 13th over, 2 wickets had fallen and New Zealand were on 53 for 2. Ross Taylor, however, got the home side back on track. He became his country's leading ODI century maker as he smashed an unbeaten 102, his 100 coming off the last ball of the innings.
Magnificent history for Ross Taylor.
Taylor and Jimmy Neesham, with 71, formed an unbroken partnership of 123 runs, as the hosts finished on 289 for 4. The Proteas' wickets fell at regular intervals. Opener Hashim Amla, the first to go for just 10.
The dangerous Amla is gone.
Only wicketkeeper Quinton de Kock and Dwayne Pretorius managed to go past the 50-run mark. De Kock smashed 6 fours as he hit 57 off 65 deliveries.
Another fine half-century for him, his 11th in one-day internationals.
Pretorius, who earlier took 2 for footy, made 50 off just 27 balls. His valiant effort included 4 fours and 2 sixes.
That is some shot, that.
It was, however, too little too late. Andile Pehlukwayo was unbeaten on 29, but the South Africans were restricted to 283 for 9, just 6 runs short of achieving a new successive ODI match-winning record.
I wasn't too unhappy about the bowling performance. It's more about the bat. I thought there were quite a few soft dismissals, not enough good partnerships. And the ones that we did actually get going, the good partnerships that started, we didn't extend. So it's crucial to do that if you want to win games of cricket.
The action now moves to Wellington, where the third ODI will take place on Saturday. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now to the other news making headlines in the sporting world this morning. Mamelodi Sundowns coach Pete Umsimane says his players should have done better in front of goals last night. In last night's 2-1 win over Platinum Stars. The win sees Mamelodi Sundowns move up to 4th place in the standings, just 4 points behind leaders Kaizer Chiefs, but with 5 matches in hand.
The African champions had the upper hand in the early exchanges, enjoying the lion's share of possession. And they usually took the lead, with Themba Zwane scoring after a Fares Hachi pass found him in the box.
Converted after 10 minutes is classic Sundowns. Simply classic Mamelodi Sundowns these days.
Captain Hlompo Kekana missed the target by a few inches with his trademark shot from outside the box going wide. Downs should have gone 2-0 up moments later, with sensation Percy Tau doing everything right, only for his shot to miss the target. Tau was again in the thick of things, setting up Anthony Laffour, who only needed to tap the ball in to score, but instead found keeper Mbongeni Mzimela. Spaman Dlamulilo leveled the score for Stars minutes into the second half, with his header beating keeper Dennis Onyango. Billiard had the last say, scoring the winning goal after receiving a pass from Tau.
I know you gave Percy man of the match, but he didn't play well in the first half, my opinion. Okay, Anton, I don't even want to talk. I mean, really. What I mean, ball in front of you, in front of goals. They know. Not to say that I'm criticizing them. I love them and I praise them. Last week I was praising them, but why should I praise them tonight after this?
Sundowns will host Bidvest Vets on Saturday at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium in Pretoria. Pesing Katla, SABC News.
There's nothing like a straight-talking coach to get your big boots back on. It was raining goals in the UEFA Champions League first leg, last 16 matches last night, with 14 goals scored in just 2 matches. Sergio Aguero starred as Manchester City beat Monaco 5-3 in an end-to-end encounter at the Etihad Stadium. City came from behind and scored 3 goals in the last 19 minutes to take a 2-goal lead heading into the return leg.
It's just 2 of the last 26 in all.
A string of defensive errors allowed Monaco to take control of the match despite City's perfect start. Raheem Sterling gave Manchester City the advantage with a 26th-minute goal after fine work by Leroy Sané. But Monaco led at the break, courtesy of a Radamel Falcao's header and Kylian Mbappe's powerful rising drive.
There's the pace, there's the potential, there's the lethal finishing. Monaco have a second away goal at Manchester City.
Then a blunder by Monaco keeper Subasic gave Sergio Aguero his first goal.
What a dreadful moment for the keeper. He couldn't care less.
But Monaco's vibrant attacking ambition means this tie is far from over.
Aguero, Sané! The referee has a look. The referee has a check. Sané celebrates. He was onside. Manchester City, absolutely amazing.
Atletico Madrid beat hosts Bayer Leverkusen 4-2 to take a firm grip on their Champions League last 16 tie ahead of the return leg in Spain next month. The Bundesliga club, finalists in 2002, are now at risk of missing out on the last 8 for a 5th time. 2 lethal counter-attacks in the opening 25 minutes put the 2014 and 2016 finalists in the driving seat, with Saul Niguez and Antoine Griezmann on target. Then Leverkusen cut the deficit 3 minutes after the restart through Karim Bellarabi. Atletico's Kevin Gamero scored from a penalty spot before a Stefan Savic's own goal set up a nervous finale. Fernando Torres ended any speculation with a goal in the 86th minute to take revenge for last season 1-0 loss as the Germans suffered their first home defeat in Europe after a 10-match unbeaten run.
2-goal advantage restored again.
Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Interesting how last night two players who returned to the cradle of their fame were doing well. Fernando Torres back at Atletico and Radamel Falcao back at Monaco, scoring goals once again. Now, staying with football, FIFA President Gianni Infantino is in Johannesburg, along with reportedly every single president from the 54-member CAF for a closed-door meeting over 2 days. The meeting is ostensibly about briefing the African Federation about how the future expanded World Cup will work from 32 to 48 teams. Now, usually, the only time all association presidents gather together is for annual FIFA and CAF congresses. So, to call this meeting unprecedented is apt. The meetings, which are being held behind closed doors, will be followed by a trip by Infantino to Harare on Thursday to join birthday celebrations for the Zimbabwe Football Association president, Philip Chiangwa. Chiangwa is a vocal critic of Issa Hayatou and is backing Hayatou's opponent Ahmad, the head of Madagascar's Football Association, in next month's CAF presidential election. Infantino's planned presence in Harare is seen as a tacit sign of support for the anti-Hayatou camp. Now, Hayatou and CAF last year formally endorsed the candidacy of Bahrain's Sheikh Salman, who Infantino beat in the FIFA presidential election. The CAF elections are to be held in Addis Ababa on the 16th of March. There you have it. That's what we have for you in terms of the sport. We'll be done with the show shortly, but before we let you go and say goodbye, hasta mañana, les salen simple, we've got the weather for you.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. And in terms of your weather, we're expecting more rainfall towards the central and the northeastern part of South Africa, and those could lead to flooding again towards the northern parts of the Gauteng regions, as well as over the southern part of Limpopo, going towards Mpumalanga province and down towards some parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Widespread showers now stretching all the way up north towards Malawi, as well as over Zambia, and definitely towards Botswana. Do expect similar conditions in terms of rainfall. And then by Thursday, you'll see most of it also moving in that western direction before it turns all the way towards the east again. And for Madagascar, do expect widespread showers just along the west. In terms of your temperatures, take a look at this. Quite a hot day is expected for Windhoek at a maximum of 32 degrees. Sunny skies are expected along the southern interior, and a cool weather for PE at a maximum of 23 degrees. Yeah, the rest of South Africa is in fact expected to be a bit warmer, and you'll see most of the temperatures going as high as about 33. Polokwane 22, 19 towards Pretoria, and it is expected to remain into those mid-teens for the northeastern side. But as you move further up north along Botswana and Zimbabwe, you'll see temperatures going as high as about 28 degrees for Gaborone and Bulawayo. Windhoek also do expect similar conditions with warm to slightly hot conditions there. Libreville is at 29, partly cloudy skies with a bit of moisture and rain towards Brazzaville and Kinshasa, and they are both into the mid-30s. Along the northeastern side, temperatures are a lot cooler. Kampala 23, and then 26 is expected for Addis Ababa. But you expect a hot day for Banjul at a maximum of 39. And then again, take a look at this rainfall now coming in from Morocco, stretching towards Algeria. But the rest expected to be clear, dry, sunny conditions across the Sahara Desert, and a bit of rain also for Gabon, going towards some parts of Cote d'Ivoire. And for all those that are going to be along much of the west coast of Africa, do expect some slightly rainy conditions.